If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more compelling narratives like this one. Now, let's dive into the life of a young doctor whose world is about to be turned upside down. The elevator doors slid open with a tired chime, perfectly matching Dr. Nomi Chen's exhaustion as she shuffled into the narrow hallway of her apartment building. 27 years old and already carrying the weight of countless lives on her shoulders, she had just completed an 18-hour shift at Boston General. Her white coat was spotted with coffee stains, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun that had long given up its original form. The halls of the hospital had been particularly chaotic. A multi-vehicle accident had brought in 7 critical patients simultaneously, and she'd been on her feet the entire time, moving between trauma rooms with barely a moment to breathe. All she wanted now was her bed, perhaps a hot shower first, if she could summon the energy. Her muscles ached from standing, her mind fogged from the constant high-stakes decisions. The weight of her backpack, containing nothing more than a half-eaten sandwich and her medical journals, felt like a boulder strapped to her back. Nomi reached her apartment door, key extended. It slid into the lock, but wouldn't turn. She frowned, tried again, wiggling the key. Nothing. She checked the number, apartment 503. This was definitely her door, the one she'd been walking through for the past 6 years, ever since starting medical school. The apartment that had been her sanctuary away from her stepmother Lisa's constant criticisms and her stepsister Kayla's endless demands. A text notification lit up her phone. Unknown number. She opened it. If you want your things, you'll need to pay what you owe. $36,000 in back rent, cash or wire transfer only. Nomi blinked, trying to process the words through her exhaustion. A second message came through. This is Lisa. Kayla needs a vacation after all her hard work at the community college. Your father would want to support her. The hallway seemed to spin slightly as Nomi leaned against the wall. Her stepmother had changed the locks. Of course she had. Lisa had been threatening something like this for years, some kind of payback for what she perceived as Nomi's privileged position in her father's affections, despite the fact that Nomi had barely seen her father in the past 5 years due to his overseas military deployments. Just as Nomi was about to call a hotel, the apartment door swung open. Lisa stood there, arms crossed over her designer blouse, blonde hair perfectly styled despite the late hour. Behind her, Kayla lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone, not even bothering to look up. Well? Lisa's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her arm. Do you have my money? Nomi stared at her stepmother, taking in the smug satisfaction in the woman's eyes. She thought about the years of subtle psychological warfare, the comments about her weight, her studies, her choice of profession. She thought about how Lisa had thrown away her mother's photographs, claiming they were collecting dust. She thought about the times Lisa had accidentally scheduled family events when Nomi had important exams. And in that moment, something inside Nomi, something that had been bending for years, finally stopped bending. She simply nodded, turned around, and walked away. The morning light filtered through the windows of the coffee shop where Nomi had spent the night, hunched over her laptop. She hadn't slept. Instead, she'd made calls to her father's lawyer, Mr. Harrington, who had been more than happy to assist, even at the late hour. He'd always had a soft spot for Nomi, having known her since she was a child, back when her mother was still alive. "I've prepared everything you requested, Dr. Chen," said the elderly lawyer, placing a thick manila envelope on the table between them. His use of her professional title wasn't lost on Nomi. "The eviction notice is legally binding, and I've included the deed to the house, as you asked." "Thank you, Mr. Harrington." Nomi's voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the envelope. "I appreciate your discretion in this matter." The lawyer nodded, his eyes kind behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Your father made sure everything was in order before his last deployment. The trust became active on your 21st birthday. The house has been legally yours for 6 years. 6 years. For 6 years, she had been paying rent to Lisa for a house that Nomi actually owned. The revelation should have felt more shocking, but somehow it didn't. Her father had always been methodical, always thinking 10 steps ahead. Of course, he would have protected her this way. An hour later, Nomi stood at the front door of the colonial-style house where she had grown up. The home her biological mother had lovingly decorated, where Nomi had learned to ride a bike, where she'd studied for her MCATs, and now, officially and undeniably, hers. She didn't use her key. Instead, she rang the doorbell and waited, the manila envelope clutched tightly in her hand. When the door swung open, revealing a bathrobe-clad Lisa with a coffee mug in hand, Nomi spoke before her stepmother could. "This is for you," she said, extending the envelope. "Legal documents that might interest you." Lisa snatched the envelope, her expression hovering between curiosity and disdain. "What is this, some kind of joke?" she demanded as she tore it open. "If you think a letter from some cheap lawyer is going to—" Her words died as she scanned the first document, the color drained from her face. "This is an eviction notice," Lisa whispered, then looked up sharply. "You can't evict me, this is ridiculous, this is my house." Nomi merely reached into the envelope and pulled out the second document, unfolding it carefully. "Actually, it's not. It's mine. It has been since I turned 21. She held out the deed, her name clearly visible as the legal owner. "My father transferred ownership to me through a trust 6 years ago." "That's impossible," Lisa hissed, but her voice had lost its conviction. "Robert would never—" "He did," Nomi interrupted, her voice calm despite the storm of emotions inside her. "And now I'm exercising my rights as the property owner. You and Kayla have 30 days to vacate the premises." Behind Lisa, Kayla appeared in the hallway, her face twisted in outrage. "You can't do this to us!" she shrieked, rushing forward. "This is our home. Where are we supposed to go?" Nomi looked at her stepsister, remembering all the times Kayla had borrowed her things without asking, how she'd thrown parties in the house while Nomi was studying, how she'd once spilled wine on Nomi's medical textbooks and laughed it off. "That's not my concern," Nomi said quietly. "Perhaps you could use some of the $36,000 you've collected from me over the years to find a new place." The social media barrage began that evening. First came Kayla's Instagram stories, tearful videos claiming Nomi was throwing them out on the street, that she'd always been jealous of Kayla's popularity, that she was abusing her doctor status to bully them. Then Lisa joined in with Facebook posts detailing how she'd raised Nomi like her own daughter, only to be betrayed in the cruelest way. Nomi's phone buzzed constantly with messages from mutual acquaintances asking what was going on. She ignored most of them, responding only to her closest friends with the simple truth. By midnight, she had booked a hotel room for the week and blocked both Lisa and Kayla on all platforms. "They're saying they'll expose you," said May, Nomi's best friend from medical school, as they sat in the hotel room sharing takeout. "Though they're vague about what exactly they're going to expose." Nomi picked at her pad thai, exhaustion seeping into her bones. She'd worked another 12-hour shift despite everything, because patients didn't stop needing care just because her personal life was imploding. "There's nothing to expose," she sighed. "I've never done anything worth exposing." May raised an eyebrow. "Nothing? Not even that time in second year when you—" "That was your idea," Nomi interrupted with a small smile, grateful for her friend's attempt to lighten the mood. "And sneaking into the anatomy lab after hours to study isn't exactly scandal material." "True," May conceded. "You're probably the most boring 27-year-old in Boston. All work and no play." "Someone had to be the responsible one in that house," Nomi murmured, her smile fading. "After my mother died and my father remarried, someone had to remember the bills, make sure there was food in the fridge, keep things running when Dad was deployed." "And that someone was always you," May said softly, "while Lisa spent his money and Kayla threw parties." Nomi's phone buzzed again, an email from Lisa. She hesitated before opening it. "You ungrateful little snake," the email began. After everything I've done for you, I raised you when your father was away. I made sure you had a home, and this is how you repay me? I have photos of you drinking underage. I have records of you using your father's prescription pad. I'll make sure every hospital in Boston knows what kind of person you really are if you don't withdraw this ridiculous eviction notice immediately. Nomi showed the screen to May, whose eyes widened. She's lying, Nomi said before her friend could speak. I've never touched a prescription pad, and the only alcohol I had underage was the champagne toast at their wedding, which Lisa herself handed to me. Are you going to respond? May asked. Nomi thought for a long moment, then closed the email and put her phone down. No, she said finally. I'm not going to engage with lies. I've done that my whole life, tried to correct her version of reality. I'm done. Instead, she opened her laptop and composed a different email to her father, currently stationed at a military hospital in Germany. The message was brief but comprehensive, explaining the situation and attaching copies of the eviction notice and Lisa's threatening email. She hesitated before hitting send, her cursor hovering over the button. Her relationship with her father had always been complicated, loving but distant, especially after her mother died. He'd remarried quickly, too quickly in retrospect, and then had been deployed more often than not. Their communications over the years had been sporadic, perfunctory. She didn't want to burden him, but she also knew he needed to be aware of what was happening. With a deep breath, she clicked send. 3 days later, Nomi's pager went off during rounds. The message was simple: call from Germany on line 2 in the doctor's lounge. Her attending physician nodded permission, and Nomi hurried to take the call, her heart pounding. Dad? She said when she picked up the phone. Nomi? Her father's voice sounded different, older perhaps, but also clearer somehow. I got your email. I'm so sorry. The apology caught her off guard. Robert Chen wasn't a man who apologized easily. You don't have to be sorry, she began, but he interrupted. I do. I've been sorry for years, but I didn't know how to say it. I left you to deal with them while I ran away, essentially. Deployments were easier than facing what I'd done to our family. Nomi sank into a chair, stunned by his candor. Dad, Lisa was a mistake, he continued, his voice gaining strength. A mistake I made when I was grieving your mother and not thinking clearly. I should have ended it years ago. I've already filed the divorce papers. You have? Nomi couldn't hide her shock. When? Last month, actually, before your email. I've been seeing someone else, a doctor here at the base, someone who reminds me of what real partnership looks like. There was a warmth in his voice Nomi hadn't heard in years. I should have told you sooner, but I wanted to have everything in order first. Nomi felt tears pricking at her eyes. Lisa said you were happy with her, that you approved of how she ran the house, that you... Lisa has been lying to both of us for years, Robert said firmly. She told me you were happy with the arrangement, that you appreciated her guidance. When I sent money for your education, she claimed you preferred to handle it through her. The pieces were falling into place. Years of miscommunication and manipulation orchestrated by a woman who had driven wedges wherever she could. I never saw any of that money, Nomi said quietly. I know that now. Her father sighed heavily. The good news is that the trust is ironclad. I made sure of that. The house is yours, as is the education fund I set up. Lisa cannot touch any of it, though it appears she's been trying to. A knock on the doctor's lounge door reminded Nomi that she was still on shift. Dad, I have to go back to rounds, but thank you for telling me this, for the trust, for everything. I'm coming home, he said abruptly. My tour ends next week. I've requested leave immediately after. I should be in Boston by next Thursday. We have a lot to talk about in person. For the first time in days, Nomi felt something like hope unfurling in her chest. I'd like that. As she hung up the phone, her pager beeped again, a code blue in the ICU. She took a deep breath, pushed her personal troubles aside, and ran to help save another life. It was what she did best. Lisa and Kayla's campaign escalated in the days that followed. They went from social media posts to actual flyers distributed around Boston General, claiming Nomi had stolen their home and committed various ethical violations. Hospital security confiscated the flyers, and Nomi's colleagues rallied around her, but the stress was taking its toll. "Dr. Chen, I heard about what's happening," said Dr. Patel, the chief of medicine, calling Nomi into her office one afternoon. "I want you to know that the hospital stands behind you. These accusations are clearly baseless." Nomi nodded gratefully, though embarrassment burned in her cheeks. "I never wanted my personal problems to affect my work. We're a family here," Dr. Patel said firmly, "and we protect our own. Take the rest of the day off. Get some rest. That's an order." Outside the hospital, Nomi found Kayla waiting, phone in hand as if ready to record. "How does it feel to destroy a family?" Kayla demanded loudly, obviously hoping to create a scene. "Mom is devastated. She raised you and this is how you repay her?" Nomi stopped, considering her stepsister carefully. Kayla was 24, only 3 years younger than Nomi, but she seemed perpetually stuck in adolescence, emotionally volatile, self-centered, incapable of taking responsibility for her own life. "She didn't raise me, Kayla," Nomi said quietly. "I raised myself. And often, I raised you too. Who helped you with your homework? Who made sure you had lunch money? Who covered for you when you snuck out to parties?" Kayla faltered, clearly not expecting this response. "That's not... It is true. We both know it." Nomi stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I never begrudged you the attention or the opportunities. I never complained when Lisa spent my father's money on your clothes, your vacations, your failed business ventures. But this crossed a line. Changing the locks on my apartment, demanding money, threatening my career. "We need that house," Kayla said, her voice smaller now. "Mom can't afford another place, and Jason, my boyfriend, his parents won't let us stay with them anymore." "That sounds like a problem for adults to solve," Nomi replied evenly. "Real adults who work and pay bills and don't expect others to solve their problems. I've been doing that since I was 16. Perhaps it's time you tried it too." Before Kayla could respond, a familiar voice called Nomi's name. She turned to see her father striding across the hospital parking lot, still in his military uniform. He'd aged, more grey at his temples, deeper lines around his eyes. But there was a purposefulness in his stride that had been missing for years. "Dad!" Nomi rushed to embrace him. "I thought you weren't coming until next week." "I caught an earlier transport," he said, hugging her tightly before turning to face Kayla, who had gone pale. "Kayla, I think we need to talk." The conversation that followed in a nearby cafe was tense but necessary. Robert Chen made it clear that he supported Nomi's decision regarding the house, that he had initiated divorce proceedings against Lisa, and that he would not be providing further financial support to either Lisa or Kayla. "But that's not fair," Kayla protested, tears streaming down her face. "What about college? What about my living expenses?" "You dropped out of community college 2 years ago," Robert said, his voice firm, but not unkind. "And you haven't held a job for more than a month since. I've enabled this behavior by continuing to send money, and that was my mistake. It stops now." As Kayla stormed out of the cafe, Robert turned to Nomi with regret in his eyes. "I should have been stronger years ago. I should have protected you better. We can't change the past," Nomi said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "But we can move forward." The lawsuit arrived 3 weeks later, a desperate attempt by Lisa to claim partial ownership of the house based on improvements she had made to the property and verbal agreements with Robert. Nomi's lawyer, Mr. Harrington, dismissed it as frivolous. "She has no case," he assured Nomi over the phone. "The trust is explicit, and your father's testimony destroys any claim of verbal agreements. This is a delaying tactic, nothing more." Indeed, the judge threw out the case at the preliminary hearing, ordering Lisa to vacate the property within 7 days or face contempt charges. The day she finally moved out, taking with her only what could be proven to be her personal property under the watchful eye of a court officer, was strangely anticlimactic. There was no dramatic confrontation, no tearful goodbyes. Lisa simply glared at Nomi as she walked past her to the waiting taxi. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You've made an enemy for life." Nomi watched her go, feeling nothing but relief. "I can live with that," she murmured to herself. Kayla had already moved out weeks earlier, after a spectacular fight with her boyfriend Jason had resulted in his parents finally evicting them both. Thus Nomi had heard, through mutual acquaintances, Kayla was staying with a friend and looking for work for the first time in her adult life. The house, when Nomi finally walked through it alone, felt both familiar and strange. Lisa had changed much of the decor over the years, removing traces of Nomi's mother room by room. But the bones of the house remained the same. The worn banister Nomi had slid down as a child, the kitchen door frame where her height had been marked each birthday, the window seat in the living room where she'd spent countless hours reading medical textbooks. Robert helped her move her things from storage, working side by side with her to reclaim the space. They repainted walls, replaced furniture, and slowly transformed the house back into a home. In the evenings they talked, really talked for the first time in years, about her mother, about his mistakes, about the future. "I'm being reassigned to Walter Reed," he told her one night as they sat on the back porch, watching fireflies dance in the summer twilight. "It's a 2-year posting, no more overseas deployments." "That's wonderful," Nomi said, genuinely pleased. Her father's military career had always been important to him, but the constant deployments had taken their toll on them both. "Eleanor is coming with me," he added, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "We're getting married in the fall. I'd like you to be there, if you want to." Eleanor was the doctor he'd mentioned, a trauma surgeon he'd met in Germany. Nomi had spoken with her several times on video calls and had been surprised by how much she liked the straightforward, compassionate woman. There was no artifice to Eleanor, no hidden agenda. "I wouldn't miss it," Nomi assured him, and meant it. 6 months after the night Lisa had changed the locks, Nomi stood in the kitchen of her home, truly her home now, brewing coffee before her shift. The house was peaceful in the early morning light, filled with a sense of possibility that had been missing for years. Her phone chimed with a text from May. "Drinks tonight to celebrate your first official 6 months of home ownership?" Nomi smiled and texted back, "Absolutely. My place at 8? I'll cook." As she headed out the door to the hospital, Nomi paused to take a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt completely, unconditionally at peace. If you've enjoyed this story of resilience and justice, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment below. Your support helps us create more compelling content like The House That Was Always Hers. Thank you for listening.